Good evening, everyone. I am Chris, and I am back with another Rings of Power review. It is Friday again, and we have things to talk about, don't we? As we do every week. This is episode 6, Udûn, Flame of Udun. And yeah, as I'd said, did a lot go down in this episode? I don't even know. But nonetheless, I've written a lot of notes on it, as I always do, and we're going to talk about this thing. The good, the bad, the ugly, and mostly just the bad. It is the Rings of Power, of course. That's what we're talking about. So I invite all of you to comment along as well. If you are tuning in tonight, if you have seen the Rings of Power and you want to share your thoughts, this is an open chat. And I bring up your comments as well. So it's nice to have a conversation with you guys as well to see if we're on the same page. And even if we're not on the same page, then that's all good. Please do feel free to share your opinion, whether you enjoy the Rings of Power or you hate the Rings of Power. Please do consider subscribing to the channel as well for more reviews, movie reviews, TV show reviews as well, discussions and live streams. The subscribers are actually going up really nicely. I think I'm on like 120 something now, which is great. So thank you to everyone that's clicked the subscribe button and for tolerating me and at least enjoying my content, at least to hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell icon as well, because live streams like this that do crop up, it's always good to have that notification. And check me out on Twitter as well. Give me a follow on there. I post all the live stream links so that they're all ready to go, as well as some other things and movies that I might be watching during the week. I actually went to see Kill Bill Volume 1 at the cinema last night. Odeon were doing a rescreening, and let me tell you, that's how you do a strong female lead. People writing for Galadriel this season need to take notes. Kill Bill, that's how you do it. Also, a blonde woman out for revenge. So there are comparisons there, I guess. And as I said, yeah, let me know your thoughts on the Rings of Power. At the end of the stream, I've got an announcement to make actually for next week's, which will be really, really fun. So stick around for that. And also I'll go over the rest of the content that's meant to be coming out next week. We've got Carl already. Yeah, I'm doing very well. Thank you, mate. How about yourself? It's been a long day at work. I've got to be up early tomorrow for work again because, what is that weekend feel of Friday into Saturday anymore? Nikki says, why am I not getting notifications? Well, first and foremost, it's good to see you again, Nikki. So thank you for jumping on. I don't know. I know there's the bell icon, which they introduced a few years ago. If you click that, that should notify you. If you've already got that clicked, then I can't help you, I'm afraid. I'm not technologically minded when it comes to YouTube. Okay, so Udûn. Where do we start with this one? I think... Now, don't get me wrong. This episode was terrible, and I hated it. But I would say, out of all 6 episodes, this one's probably the best. And when I say the best, don't misconstrue that as me liking this episode. I didn't. But gun to my head, which is the best Rings of Power episode, I would probably say this one. And I think the reason for that is that the majority of it is just an action scene where characters don't have to open their fucking mouths and talk useless nonsense dialogue that's verbose and prophetic and, pseudo-intellectual kind of stuff. There is some of that in the episode, but it's kept to a minimum because mostly it's just an action scene and fighting and stabbing and so much blood. Like, this was actually a lot gorier than I expected it to be, and I guess that's a positive. It was quite near the mark with some of the violence, which I appreciate. Nikki says, my favorite character of the show was introduced this episode. Introduced. See, I'd say Adar is probably my favorite character at the moment, and actually I find that I'm rooting for the bad guys, which I know the show says that I shouldn't be, but I still am. But the favorite character was introduced this episode. Are you referring to Adar, or is there another character that I'm trying to think? Introduced implies they haven't been in the show so far. But it'd just be interesting to see if we're on the same page with that. So we begin the episode with Adar, the actor who played Uncle Benjen in Game of Thrones. He'll always be Uncle Benjen to me. Oh, the volcano. Yes, a Rodru in itself. Mount Doom. Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Oh, yeah. Mount Doom gets its origin story, I guess, in this episode. That's fun. So the first part of this episode is Adar addressing his army of orcs. He's giving a rousing battle speech to them. And what's actually kind of hilarious about this show, and it's I guess it's actually kind of working with me, or maybe it's just because all of the other characters are just unlikable as hell. Galadriel is one of the most ineptly written characters I have ever seen, maybe in anything. At least in terms of adaptation as well, because there's no excuses with this. They have the novels, they have the appendices to work from, they have 3 tremendous live action adaptations to work from as well. And I don't know how they could get it so wrong. But it seems like they're humanizing the orcs quite a lot, and there's a lot of talk of that. You've got things like, oh no, we prefer to be called Uruks rather than orcs. I'm like, oh, sorry, let me get my pronouns right when it comes to my orcs. I'm sorry, Uruks. Oh, we just want a land of our own. We want to break away, and we have rights. Damn it, we're a race. We need as much attention as anyone else, and we're misunderstood, kind of thing. They say as they murder entire villages of innocent people. So it's this very backwards argument. I'm not sure what they're trying to get out of this, but it's basically like orcs have rights, essentially. And they're never really viewed as that, are they? They're just kind of viewed as a ruined form of life. And remember that quote for later, and many other quotes from the Lord of the Rings, because the other episodes have done it before, where they'll drop like the occasional line that sounds similar to like a line from the Lord of the Rings films. But this episode was fucking shameless. There were references all across the board to this, and I was thinking, like, can they get away with that? I actually don't know where the standpoint is on that, because those films were made by Warner Brothers. This is made by Amazon. Amazon only have the rights to the appendices of the Second Age. Are they allowed to just verbatim copy dialogue from the Lord of the Rings films written by, Fran Walsh, Philippa Boynes? Are they allowed to do that? They did it, so they must be able to. And then it makes me think, like, is this meant to be a prequel to the Lord of the Rings films? Or is it meant to be its own thing? Because if it's trying to be its own thing, then why just completely copy verbatim entire lines of dialogue and phrases from the Lord of the Rings movies into this one? The design of the Balrog in the previous episode, and what we're most likely to see by the end of this season, is exactly the same as Peter Jackson's version. You can see swords like Narsil in the background a number of times on Numenor. So I'm just thinking, like, is this meant to be a prequel to the movies, or is it doing its own thing? Because it can't be one or the other. And I feel like it's trying to be in the middle, and it's not working for me. Sam Oak says, question for everyone, as none of us watch on Amazon. What are you talking about, Sam? Of course I watch it on Amazon. What resolution do you watch episode in? I just started doing it in 2160p. For me, 720. It's all my computer can handle. And sometimes if it's not buffering, I have to drop it to 360p for all of that grainy quality. Raphael says, I hope this mithril story will at least serve to be the I hope this mithril story will at least serve to be the material to be used in the creation of the rings. Sauron must have been a pseudo-Promethean figure, a walking blacksmith angel creating religious engineering, engineering the culture, and so... Oh my god, sorry, it has been a long day. I can't talk today. A walking blacksmith angel creating religious engineering, the cultures and societies where he passed, much more impactful than just a magic sword. Yeah, the sword is kind of being set up to be this ring-like artifact, isn't it? I thought it was just going to be a Morgul sword at first, and you know how the blade can kind of keep reappearing and disappearing? I thought it was going to be a Morgul blade, in Fellowship, after Frodo's been stabbed, and Strider's like, he's been stabbed by a Morgul blade, and the blade just kind of disintegrates. I thought it was going to be something like that. Then it became a key. Then they kind of do a sword in the stone King Arthur kind of situation with it. But then the fact that it kind of creates a bond with its bearer, and the bearer can't stop thinking about it. It can corrupt them. It's all powerful. It's this evil artifact. It can't be destroyed by any craft that we here possess. Yeah, they're definitely trying to make it like the One Ring, aren't they? But apparently, from what I've heard, is that the Rings of Power aren't constructed this season or next. I think it's in season 3 is the initial plan, where the Rings of Power actually come into it, which seems a little bit ridiculous. But I don't know. Maybe Mithril could be used in the ring making. I don't really know if it's going to be this thing that unites dwarves and the elves. I never really considered what material they were made out of, to be honest. I thought it was less about the material they were made from, and more so the magic and the magic powers that are bestowed on them, essentially, and the buffs that they grant the wearer. Let's just see. Raphael says, I keep thinking, where are the Rings of Power? I guess I just answered this question. We're more than halfway through the season and nothing. The only reference to elven motifs is the creation of the rings was the dialogue of Celebrimbor. Yeah, so apparently we're under the impression at this point, and I mean, I'm only going by what I've seen from YouTube channels at this point, so I'm just as much in the dark as you guys are, but I think they're in the know, and they have, connections on the inside and everything. So the forge that Celebrimbor wants to create, we're under the impression that is going to be the forge that creates the Rings of Power, and he wants to create the Rings of Power. But apparently that's not the case. What I've heard is the forge that they want to build is to create something else, some other kind of weapon that isn't the Rings of Power. And I've heard that the Rings of Power don't come into it until season 3, if this show ever gets that far, which we were talking about this last week, how I don't know whether they've greenlit 5 seasons at this point, or if they can still back out of those later few seasons if the viewing figures dip, or if we're going to be getting 5 seasons of this. I kind of hope we do get 5 seasons of this now, because honestly, this is a blast. Just laughing, seeing how inept this show is, and then getting to talk about it with you guys on a Friday is amazing to me. So I kind of hope we get 5 seasons. It's not even painful. That's the thing. I've made this so divorced to Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings, and it's just a parody. To me, I'm just watching a parody. It's so laughably bad and poorly constructed. The fact that this is the most expensive show in history is just laughable to me. But it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt now, because I guess I've distanced myself so much from it. It has become so far removed from the source material. It's not like the Star Wars sequels, where they genuinely make me angry at the lack of potential of them, and how it kind of ruins the saga and destroys the original story and dismantles everything and just completely hollows out characters from what we know. I don't really get that. I suppose I get it to a point with Rings of Power, but I don't know. I think it's just because I don't see this as an adaptation of Tolkien. It's not an adaptation of Tolkien. It's an adaptation of Tolkien in name only. So I guess that's why it's an easier pill to swallow, I guess. Raphael says, Galadriel was supposed to be a sage and a political opponent of Anatar's reformist ideas. She was a philosopher queen in the end of the Second Age. Come on, Galadriel is a Karen in the show. Yeah, and she continues to be a Karen. In fact, I actually wrote that in my notes. She continues to be thoroughly unlikable. I'm actually glad at this point. I know I'm jumping ahead to the end of the episode right now, but when she has that conversation with Adar at the end, and the whole scene's kind of filmed on a Dutch angle like this. Look at me tilting my head to try and write it. I actually really like that Adar calls her out on her bullshit. She wants to just create like mass genocide on the orcs, and he's like, you're complaining about me being filled with darkness and corrupted and being tortured, but you're just as bad as me, if not worse. I'm like, yeah, she's the one who wants to go out and murder an entire race, which I guess now in the context of this show is more of a problem and is more of an issue, because they've humanized the orcs a lot more, haven't they? They're trying to give them autonomy, I suppose, and orcs have a right to live in this Middle Earth as well, damn it. We'll get onto that conversation later, though, because there are elements of it that I do enjoy, I guess. Although the fact that Adar, an elf, is creating orcs himself and he calls them his children makes absolutely no sense. Like, he is just an elf. He possesses no magical power to create. That gift is bestowed on the Ainur, who by proxy are part of the powers of Eru the One, who they actually do refer to in this episode, which I actually really enjoyed that they talk about the One. But we'll get onto that later. I'm going to try and go through the episode in order. I am loving these comments, by the way, guys, so keep them coming in. I'm going to read a few more. I'm going to read all the ones that are on here at the moment, and then I'm going to have to dip back to the episode because we've got a lot to talk about. And I want to kind of keep this to a neat time frame if I can. Sam says, I tried to leave a review on Amazon with my account, but it said it didn't save as my account had shown as not seeing it. Might watch the finale on there to leave my review. Well, if you've got a positive review, then I'm sure they'll keep it on the site. If it's a negative one, then they might delete it. But yeah, as long as your opinion's true, that's all good. Hashtag Orcs Lives Matter. Yeah. Sam mentions as well that I guess watching it in 360p doesn't help, though. It does look very good with budget. Well, the CGI just looks the lighting is really garish and just kind of highlights the CGI to me. I actually think watching it in 360p, it doesn't help a lot of the nighttime shots, I will say that, and a lot of the minutes in this episode today were shot at nighttime, so some of the scenes were a little bit difficult to make out with how the camera's like moving around. Not quite as bad as Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 3 at the Battle of Winterfell, because that was ridiculous. Everyone I know couldn't see a single frame of that episode, pretty much. But watching it in 360p, it's a little bit grainier. I think that just kind of helps the aesthetic a little bit more for me, so that it's not as pristine and HD and, CGI and everything like that. I like a bit of grain. I don't mind it. Tar Elenian Maronwe says the One Ring and Vilya were made of gold, Nenya of Mithril. The other rings are not noted. I just want to say as well just how fortunate I am that Tar Elenian comments on these videos, because I learn stuff as well. This is great. I hope to one day have as much knowledge of the lore as you do. But yeah, I couldn't remember about Nenya being made of mithril, but I did think that a lot of the rings were just made of other precious metals like gold, silver, all kinds of stuff like that. Taralenian Moranway says, quote, at no time would any Or treat with any elf. For one thing Morgoth had achieved was to convince the orcs beyond refutation that the elves were crueler than themselves. Morgoth's ring. I have, actually, if I just grab this real quick off my shelf, I do have a copy of Morgoth's ring right here, and I haven't read any of them yet, and I feel really bad. I've got all 12 of them in a very nice purchase, actually, during COVID. I got a letter from the original owner of these books before they had to be sold. And it was a very moving letter, actually. I really appreciate it. But I do want to go through that because I think it's got a lot of valuable insight in there. And clearly like that stuff that I didn't know. Anyway, let's get back to the episode. So Adar gives his battle speech. He gives his address to the orcs, and they march on the tower. It's basically what we saw at the end of the last episode. He has the line, as brothers and sisters in our home. I know that was causing a stir, like, oh, we've got female orcs now and everything like that. I don't have a problem with that because female orcs are mentioned, I believe, in one of the letters from Tolkien. He refers to the existence of female orcs, and he says, I guess they would have to be, but they don't do battle. And because we mostly see orcs in wartime and in battle, that's just why we haven't seen them. So I guess I don't mind that. The fact that they've got female orcs amongst the ranks, it is what it is. But in the question of being more diverse and, having female voices be heard, well, I hope all of you females out there, I hope your voice is heard now that we have female orcs in the ranks. It's a much more progressive time in Middle-earth in the Second Age, apparently. There's a moment where the orcs, so they all walk into the watchtower, right? And it's all deserted. And I guess they sense that it's a trap, but they all still continue to walk in anyway. One attention to detail I guess I did like was when one of the orcs walks in and he goes like, Gimbatul. And if you read the subtitles, it's find them. And of course, that is find them. So that's good attention to detail, because when you've got the ring speech, Ajnaj Gimbadul, it's one ring to find them. So yeah, find them makes sense. Nikki says, I'm so glad that I have Nikki in the comments as well, because it's nice to get a female perspective on this, and just how nonsense the whole current agenda thing is, especially when it comes to this show, certainly. You asked for women wanted more voices in this show, so you've got female orcs and you've got a thoroughly unlikable Galadriel. You've got what is it like, sage of the medicine woman of the village who's now leading the people and fighting in battle. Is your voice heard, Nikki? Do you feel heard as a woman? Tar Elenian Moronway says, there must have been orc. This was the letter I was referring to. Yeah, thank you for bringing up the quote. There must have been orc women, but in stories that seldom, if ever, see the orcs except as soldiers of armies in the service of the evil lords. Continued, we naturally would not learn much about their lives. Not much was known. The Mudby letter. Yeah, I knew it was in one of the letters. So thank you for sharing that quote. I do appreciate that, and it's nice to actually be able to read out direct quotations from Tolkien himself on here as well, which is wonderful. So thanks for sharing that. I've got a really nitpicky note here, and it's where the rope is severed on the tower to bring it down, and the CGI I just thought was really, they can't even cut a rope in half. They have to CGI the rope being cut in half, and the textures just didn't look right on it. That the whole tower coming down didn't look very good to me. That might be a bit of a nitpicky comment, and I'll acknowledge that when I don't like something, I'm much more critical of it in almost every single respect than something that I'm just kind of like okay with, or something that I outright love. So this tower comes crashing down and pretty much wipes out the majority of the orc forces. Like a good number of them. They can't get out of this keep when this tower comes down, and apparently it wipes out all of them. There's a moment that kind of reminds me of Return of the King here. Some people might disagree with me. There are some much more blatant rip-offs of lines from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, as I mentioned at the beginning of this stream. But there's a moment when like all the breeze blocks are coming down from the tower and they're crushing orcs, and I swear one's like, stand your ground or stay where you are or something like that, which just reminds me of Gothmog from Return of the King, where, the soldiers of Minas Tirith are catapulting rubble and buildings back at them, broken debris from the city back at the orcs. He's like, stay where you are. It just reminded me, and then then he sidesteps it at the last minute, doesn't he? And the troll kind of gives him this dumbfounded look. That's a badass moment, though, by the way, in Return of the King. I fucking love Gothmog. He's genuinely a really, really good leader. Nikki said, "Oh God, that hurt my voice." I'm gonna no more Gothmog impressions for the whole rest of this stream, because it will fuck my voice. I'm just going to take a sip of water and then I'll read your comment out, Nikki. Give me a second. So Nikki says, the only women that got representation in this show are the types of women that end up divorced at 40. Facts. Absolute facts. The only women that get representation in this show are the types of women that write She-Hulk, which, I guess your comment right there and my comment are mutually exclusive. Yeah. Divorced at 40 and existing off box wine. And shouting about men. Pretty much. You're not far wrong. Then we get a scene of... Okay, so we cut back to the soldiers of Numenor on the ships, sailing from Numenor to Middle-earth. I'm going to put this question out there because we're going to come back to this later. You know where I'm going with this. Just on average, how many miles do you think it is from the shores of Numenor to the Southlands. More importantly, Udûn, or I guess, a Rodruin. How many miles do you think that is to get from Numenor to Mordor? I'm going to throw that out there. Hit me with some numbers. And Isildur is looking wistfully to the sunrise. He is the stable hand at the moment. And Galadriel is also on deck with him, and the two share a conversation. He's like, "Oh, I just want to see the horizon," and she's like, "You have not seen what I have seen. I have seen the horizon for hours now because I am superior to you, Isildur." It's like, God, even when she's trying to be sincere, and they're trying to have a nice moment, even then she's just a smug bitch about things. So they look into the horizon, Elendil comes out, and the two of them bond. They mention Isildur's deceased mother, Elendil's wife, and that'll come back up later as well. There's a lot of references to her in this one. I think Galadriel asks Elendil, doesn't she? She says, like, "Oh, how did your wife die?" I was like, is she trying to make the moves on Elendil now? Well, Celeborn's not in the picture, so, although God forbid Galadriel should hook up with a man because it will take away her agency. Although saying that, I think the show definitely is trying to ship Galadriel and Halbrand, specifically with a scene that features much later on in the episode. So yeah, she asks Elendil, "How did your wife die?" And he says that she drowned. And I thought, well, apparently the sea is always right, so I guess it was right for her to die. You can't hold a grudge against the sea because the sea is in fact always right. Let's see. Then we cut to Arondir trying to destroy the sword, and the village makes ready for battle. I mentioned already that they're clearly trying to make the sword like the One Ring, the MacGuffin, the thing that has to be destroyed, the ultimate evil artifact that corrupts its bearer. I guess that's the equivalent in this episode, because God forbid the Rings of Power should be the all-corrupting force in this show, in a show called The Rings of Power. But, we have 5 seasons that we've got to drag this shit out over, so we can't have the Rings of Power being created in season 1, because what else are we going to make after that? How are we going to crank out 4 more seasons of this shit? Oh, God. And then we get fucking Bronwyn. Okay, so Bronwyn's like leading the people, right? She's leading all the people in the village. And her son Theo, she tells him to look after the women and the children, and he says, like, "I can fight." And she's like, "No, you must do this for me." And then he says, "When I was scared as a child, you used to say something to me to kind of comfort me. Please say that to me now." And I thought, oh, wow, they're actually having a character moment here. This is nice. Until the words that leave Bronwyn's lips are almost exactly the same, if not exactly the same, as Samwise Gamgee's ending monologue of Two Towers, which is actually one of my favorite lines. Some could argue that it might be a little bit cheesy at the end of Two Towers, but I think paired with the finale of the film, the music, and how it kind of wraps everything up, I think it's a beautiful speech. And Bronwyn says to Theo, quote, "In the end, this shadow is but a small and passing thing." Now let's remind ourselves of the line from the Two Towers by Samwise when he's talking to Frodo at Osgiliath. "But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow." And what is it? "A new day will come," or something he says, "and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer." It's exactly the same. So they're trying to like play on your knowledge of Lord of the Rings. But again, who is this show made for? Because people who like the Lord of the Rings movies sure as shit probably hate this show, right? I don't know who it's made for, because it sure as hell isn't made of fans of the books. I think it's probably just made for people that watched Lord of the Rings once and are then fans of Game of Thrones. But like fans of Game of Thrones season 7 and 8. It's the kind of people that said like, "Oh, that season 8 was just the best season of Game of Thrones. It was so bold and intelligently written and all of these things." I think it's just made for people like that, which might be a slightly dickish thing to say, because, if people want to like this show, they can. But it's just when they throw lines in from the films, I'm just like, what are you trying to achieve here? Oh god, this show's fucking terrible. My next point is also another pilfered line as well from The Return of the King this time, also by Samwise. Nikki says, it is so obvious. Guy Ladbro is Rey and Halbrand, not Sauron. Totally not Sauron. I'm seriously, this is not Sauron. It's Kylo Ren. Yeah, it absolutely is. And is he going to become like, well, when he reveals himself as Sauron, is Galadriel going to kiss him at the end still? Because, you know, we've got to ship that romance. So we had Raylo. We're going to have... What are we going to have? We're going to have Galbrand. Galbrand. There we go. Right. Let's hashtag that. Hashtag Galbrand. Although that might give the impression that that I actually am shipping this, which I'm really not. Hashtag Galbrand. Yeah, because Galron doesn't really work, does it? I'm trying to think. Galbrand actually kind of rolls off the tongue. Tar's on the numbers. He is on the numbers already. So the distance, roughly, give or take, from the shores of Numenor to Erodruin is 2,000 miles. And they go in by ship as well. And then when they get to land, they then got to ride all the way from the utmost west. Well, I guess they could sail around, couldn't they? I guess they could sail around the Sundering Seas and approach Mordor from the south. Maybe, I don't know. I don't think I don't think they'd sail from shore to shore, would they? And then have to ride from sort of like around the Grey Havens all across the land. I'm guessing they would sail around, but even then, 2,000 miles. As I say, God, dude, I'm so glad that I've got Taralinian in the comments. This is great. Tar's like now my unofficial fact checker on this, which makes sure that I'm actually not spreading lies about this thing, or I'm actually knowing what I'm talking about. So this is great. Then we have another quote. And I actually didn't make a note of who said this line, but there's a line in there. It's probably from Galadriel or some shit. I don't know. Quote, there is light and beauty far beyond its reach. It actually might be a continuation of the Bronwyn scene now I come to think about it. There is light and beauty far beyond its reach. And it just reminded me of Samwise's line. It's almost, again, identical. It's from the extended edition of Return of the King, if I recall. And it's also a scene in the books. It's one of my favorite scenes in the Lord of the Rings book, actually. And it's when Frodo and Sam are crossing the plains of Gorgoroth, and Samwise, when all is lost and all hope is lost and all's bleak, he looks up to the sky and he sees the stars. He sees a single star shining above the clouds, and he talks about that those are places where evil cannot reach, or darkness cannot reach, or something like that. It's a beautiful moment. It's one of my favorite moments, and that line, it's just almost verbatim from it. Arondir then gives Bronwyn a seed to plant, and we get a hint at Yavanna, the Ainur. I don't know if they have the rights to the name Yavanna, but he says there is a Valar who is like Mother Nature and helps things grow. And I'm like, yeah, it's Yavanna. So he gives her a seed, and he says it's an elvish custom to plant a seed before battle. And it actually kind of reminded me of what is now a deleted scene from the Battle of the Five Armies, where the original idea for the plant was for the planting of the acorn, not for Bilbo to take the acorn back with him to the Shire and plant it off screen. It was going to be planted during the middle of the battle. Bilbo was going to plant the acorn in the city of Dale, and he has like this whole speech about when faced with death, you go on living, and this planted, this tree, this acorn that he's planting is a symbol of that. It's actually a really nice scene. It's very inconvenient that Bilbo starts waxing philosophical in the middle of a battle scene, but I appreciated the scene. It just kind of reminded me of that. The fact that, in terms of all things that grow as well, you have Galadriel, who gives Sam the box of soil, which is then used to replant the Shire after the scouring of the Shire in the book. So the whole essence of growing things and out of death coming life and regrowth and rebirth. That is a theme in Tolkien. You then have Arondir and Bronwyn kissing, just, elf human romance. Because that worked so well in The Hobbit, didn't it? Well, granted, that was Elven and Dwarven, though, wasn't it? But even then, like, it's just we've got a crowbar a love story in there, haven't we? Because that sells with that sells with the people. The young teenage demographic love their romance in things, so we've got to make sure we've got it in there, despite the fact that it just breaks the law. You had Beren and Luthien, which itself was a precursor to Aragorn and Arwen. But beyond that, that's kind of it. Elves don't fall in love with humans. When it happens, it's a huge pivotal moment that symbolizes the union of those two races. It doesn't happen all of the time. Elves don't fall in love with everyone. They don't fall in love with humans, with dwarves, with, it's just with humans. They don't. Next thing, what, they're going to fall in love with orcs? Are they going to fall in love with a Balrog? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Toralinian says they could sail up the Anduin. My 2,000 miles is a guess, as I do not know where Amazon put Numenor in relation to the Southlands. I guess at this point we just have to kind of assume that it's the same Middle-earth map we've always thought of, right? Like the map of Beleriand into Middle-earth. My 2,000 miles guess, as I don't. Sorry, I was just reading your comment there. Then we cut to the actual beginning of the battle itself. It's at night time. It hides the budget well. And you can clearly see parallels where they're trying to recapture the tension at the beginning of Helm's Deep. At first, you have all the women and children going to safety. And then you've got Arondir on the parapet, unlike the crenellation of where they're post up. And you can just see the distant torches and the distant marching of the orcs, and it's all very quiet and it's all very atmospheric, and you've got people readying for battle and everything like that. It just feels so much like the beginning of Helm's Deep. But Helm's Deep is actually, in my opinion, the greatest on-screen, like, siege medieval battle scene that we've ever had in cinema history. I don't think it will ever be topped. And they were they were trying so hard. You could see they were trying so hard to recapture that tension, and it just didn't work. You then have lots of fighty, stabby, stab. You have lots of over-the-top things. You have Arondir doing kind of spin kicks like a martial artist and jumping off things and everything like that. The way it's shot as well is very strange, and it almost... The only thing I can kind of describe it as or compare it to is 300. But I think that 300 was done a lot better. I think it was shot a lot better and it was much more stylized. But I don't know if this was like just really overly CGI or like a CGI background. Something was off. Specifically in that scene where Arondir fights the orc. I don't know if they like fucked around with the frame rate or something, but something didn't look quite right. It looked like things might have been sped up. I don't know if they kept switching him with a digital double during the fight scene, like the 1,000 Agents fight from Matrix Reloaded or something, how it keeps cutting between real Keanu and a CGI one. I don't know. And I'd probably have to go back and watch it again, but just something felt off. Something felt a little bit uncanny valley about that fight with the orc. One thing I did like, though, as I mentioned, was the gore. It really didn't pull any punches with that, and there were a lot of really grisly scenes with it. The bit where, the big boss orc that like rocks up and it's, he's basically choking out Arondir over a well. And I think Arondir, or does the orc pull like something out of his head? He reminds me of that dwarf, actually. Is it, it's not Biffa, is it? Bofa. I think it's Bofa. Is it Biffa or Bofa? I don't know. I need to go back and remember my... I should know this. My dwarves, the one who's got the axe lodged in his head. And the orc pulls this like shrapnel out of its head. Out of its eye, sorry, isn't it? It's out of his eyeball, and he goes to stab Arondir with it. And it's like that where the point's like almost going into his eye. And there's just blood just gushing out of this eye socket. It's really like, I actually say the blood's actually quite over the top in this episode, especially when Bronwyn gets hit and they pull the arrow out of her shoulder. And like, I guess unless like the arrow in Bronwyn had like snagged an artery or something in her shoulder, I don't think a shoulder would bleed that much. This is just like Kill Bill style, just torrenting blood out of it like a cascading waterfall. And it was cool because I didn't expect Amazon would go that way. It's it doesn't pull its punches when it comes to the gore, which I appreciated. Oh, that was it. Arondir had stabbed him with a piece of wood. Yeah, no, that's right. Let's see. Okay, then it's revealed. This was a really weird scene as well. It's revealed that the humans have been mostly fighting their own. Among the orcish ranks are just humans, and I'm guessing that's like the huge group of people that split away from the camp and went to work with the orcs. They've just joined the orcs and are fighting the people that they love. So yeah, fuck them. Who cares if you're fighting your own? They were trying to murder you down to the last woman and child. So they've lived their life all of that time in that village, building relationships. And then it just takes one old man to go, you know what they say about, well, I'll say one thing for our ancestors. They lived. And he was just like, let's go and meet with the orcs. And then the orcs are just making them kill their own and everything. But yet somehow they agree to sign up with them, get slapped in armor, go out and charge against them. I don't know. It seems a bit quick to me to for someone to defect that quickly. But anyway, then we get some slow-mo and the orcs are firing arrows and the tide has turned. The pendulum swing of the battle goes in the orcs' favor, and they are just picking people off. They are just mowing them down with bow and arrow. And there's a big lack of continuity here, actually, in this bit. I swear, and I might have to go back and check it again, but I'm pretty confident in saying Bronwyn gets hit twice. When they're trying to make it into the keep, you see her take 2 arrows. But then when they get her in the tavern and they get her on the table, she's just got the one through the shoulder. And it kind of reminded me of that scene in The Last Jedi when Rey and Kylo are fighting against the Praetorian guards. And you've got that Praetorian guard with the 2 daggers. And then when he gets Rey in like a chokehold, all of a sudden his other dagger disappears because I guess they kind of forgot that guard had 2 daggers and could easily kill Rey in that moment. So I don't know. I guess the Amazon writers just kind of forgot that Bronwyn got hit with 2 arrows because 2 arrows is scary. It's one away from, Sean Bean killing. So they get her in there and they're trying to operate on her and they snap the arrow and Arondir just yanks this fucking arrow out of her. I'm like, God, you couldn't have just gone, nice and slowly, delicately to not do any more damage. He's just like, I think he takes 2 grips actually to pull this arrow out of her, and then blood. And she's like, Theo, you need to stem the bleeding. And he's like, I can't do it. And she's like, look, motherfucker, if you don't do this, I'm dead. So they cauterize the wound. The orcs are approaching still. Right around this time, the armies of Numenor have arrived in Middle-earth and are pretty much at the Southlands already. And I knew this was going to happen. I heard a rumor from this last week that within this episode, during that same battle, the armies of Numenor were just going to be there. And doesn't it just make the world of Middle-earth just seem so much smaller? This show's done a really bad job of the geography of that. And don't get me wrong, there are elements of that in Peter Jackson's, well, even in The Lord of the Rings to some respect. There's the moment at the end of the 2 Towers, which it works as an ending scene to the 2 Towers, but the fact that Gandalf the White and, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, after the Battle of Helm's Deep, essentially, when they ride up that ridge, the fact that they can see the glow of Mordor and Mount Doom from Helm's Deep is ridiculous. There is no way. There is no way that they would see Mordor on the horizon from Helm's Deep. The worst offender of it is the Hobbit trilogy, how you've got Legolas and Tauriel taking a side quest up to Gundabad, and then getting back from Gundabad to the Lonely Mountain in like half a day, a full day. It's ridiculous. But they're doing the same in this thing as well. The army of Numenor showing up in this episode makes no sense. No sense at all. And we've seen it a bunch of times before with Elrond and Celebrimbor taking a trip up to Khazad-dûm in literally a single edit of the show. You've got Celebrimbor and Elrond just getting to Khazad-dûm. And then in the next episode, you've got the dwarf back in Lindon. It's just people are just jumping around. It just makes the map feel really small, and things don't really mean things. It reminds me of how quick and how hastily written things were in Game of Thrones season 7, specifically the episode where they go beyond the wall and they get beset by the White Walkers. There's a moment where Jon Snow and all the people from the wall get surrounded on like a little ice. Is it like an ice island or something? They get stranded. No, it's on a rock or something, isn't it? They get stranded on a rock and are like dying from exposure. And he sends Gendry back, and Gendry manages to find his way all the way back to the wall, despite that's his first time venturing beyond the wall. Everything looks the same. It's frozen tundra. He gets back to the wall. He must pen a note, send it via Raven. The Raven then has to fly from the wall all the way to Dragonstone. Daenerys then needs to pick up the message, mobilize her forces, and then fly all the way from Dragonstone to get to the wall. And all of this happens within like a couple of hours of an evening. It's ridiculous. It's shit like that. It just really annoys me. Things mean things, and there needs to be a passage of time, and there is no passage of time in this show. It's absolutely ridiculous. Nikki says this show needs to kill a few characters. Is it Negan? I didn't watch that far in The Walking Dead, I'm afraid. I know the bit you're referring to, though. It needs to kill a few characters Negan style to pump some fear into this shit show. It's so boring when every character has impenetrable plot armor. Well, I mean, some are meant to have plot armor, aren't they? The likes of Galadriel, for example, Elrond. You know, we're aware that some characters need to survive and are going to make it out of this thing. I mean, nothing would please me more than to kill Galadriel off at this point, but sorry. There are some characters that just can't. But then on the flip side of that, Celeborn. I think they probably will bring Celeborn into it at some point, but apparently the reason they didn't put Celeborn into it, they haven't even mentioned Celeborn. I heard that in episode 7, so next week's episode, Galadriel was meant to say something like, I lost a brother and I lost a husband, referring to the fact that Celeborn's dead. He can't be, though, because he needs to be around. They need to have a daughter. Where is Celebrian? Why is she not already Elrond's wife? Why do they not have a child that is Arwen? It's shit like this that pisses me off. But the reason they didn't put Celeborn in, and I think this was a verbatim quote, was because they didn't want to rob Galadriel of her agency in the show. In other words, they wanted a strong female character, and apparently, if you're married, that you can't be a strong female. You can't identify as a strong female if you are subservient, if you are married, if you are in any kind of unionship, but specifically if you're married to a man, you can't be strong. It robs you of your agency if you are married. It's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, it just shows how narrow-minded these writers are. And the fact that you could have Celeborn in the show, you could have Celeborn doing all the fighting, and Elrond going out to fight as well. But you could still have Galadriel be strong in other ways. She was involved in things, she just wasn't leading a fucking cavalry charge. The fact that she's the one leading the Men of Numenor, a battle-hardened race who have their own generals and have their own stratagems and everything like that, but Galadriel's got to be like, no, oh no, you have not seen what I have seen. I have fought these forces before. You do not know what you're up against. You know, I'm going to mansplain how to kill an orc for you, like in last time when she's training the Men of Numenor. She says, because you're stupid men, I'm going to mansplain this for you. Stab, twist, gut. I'm like, wow, great advice there. So you're telling me in order to stab and kill the thing that I need to fight, I need to stab and kill it. It's great. And remember, fight with your feet, not with your hands. Tar says, especially considering how painstaking Tolkien was with distances and times. Yeah. And I know all about distances and times with Lord of the Rings, and I'm going book accurate as well. I'm still slogging through, albeit very, very slowly, on my Lord of the Rings virtual challenge. I don't know if you guys know about this already. I am doing a Lord of the Rings walking challenge. I have my very nice medal. I did an unboxing of this, actually. So the first leg of the journey is done, and I've done the Shire. I am now currently trekking from Bree, and the finish line is the Doors of the Lonely Mountains. The Doors. Oh Christ! Sorry, the Doors of the Lonely Mountains. The Doors of the Misty Mountains. The Doors of Moria. It's been a long day, guys. I'm sorry. That's where I'm heading to. So yeah, distances mean something. I've got to walk another 750k in order to get to my destination. But apparently, Galadriel can just sail across an entire ocean, which is probably the equivalent to the Atlantic, sail up a huge river that covers, into most of the mainland, and then have to ride still a considerable number of miles from the shores of the Anduin all across Middle-earth to get to the Southlands. It's absolutely ridiculous. Nikki says, I was gifted Shadow of Mordor on Steam. Is it worth a play, chat? Is it worth a play, chat, and streamer? I've never done any gaming streams before. I actually don't know how to go about doing gaming streams. I actually, JX Editor, my buddy, he's done streams on his channel before where he streamed, I think, like Knights of the Old Republic, maybe he was playing. I forgot the Star Wars game he was playing. So I could ask him how he went about it. Granted, that was on PC, though, and I don't know how I'd hook it up from my PlayStation 4 and do any kind of streaming. I've actually never played the Shadow games, Shadow of Mordor or Shadow of War. They're pretty cheap on sale at the moment, I think, on the PlayStation Store. So if I can figure out how to do it, yeah, I'd love to. It's been a while since I've got into gaming. I've never done a gaming commentary, so I don't know how that would go down or if people would be interested in seeing that. But the thing is with Shadow of Mordor, it plays very fast and loose with the lore, but I think they're still fun games, and I think the story they're telling is still... It is a fan fiction, but I don't think it's a complete bastardization of some characters. Maybe with some. I don't like the idea that... I think it's in Shadow of War, actually, where it gives away some of the identities of the Ring Wraiths, and apparently Isildur is a Ring Wraith, apparently Helm Hammerhand is a Ring Wraith, and I'm like, I don't like that. I don't like that. Specifically not those identities. I don't like that Shelob is a shape-shifting hot woman as well. Not complaining, hey, Shelob's banging, but no, that's clearly not what was the intention as well. But it goes with the movie aesthetic as well. I know you have Gollum in the first game that looks pretty much identical to Andy Serkis, and just the visual look of everything looks very much like the Peter Jackson movies. So, yeah, I'm not saying no, I won't do that, but I don't know how to do that. So, and my free time is pretty limited. I'm not going to lie, across the week. So, yeah, I don't know. Never say never, though. I'd like to play them. Let's see what else we have on these notes. How dare you rob Shelob of her agency? Hey, Shelob can be a hot, attractive woman if she wants to be. Shelob can identify as whatever she wants to be, okay? And who are we to say that she can't? I've put in my notes here, Galadriel leading a cavalry charge. Of course, because why not? Adar is actually really badass in this episode. I really like the actor, and every time I see him, I just continue to wish that this guy was playing Sauron. He's trying, despite the limited script he's having to work with. He's trying. He's really trying. He's a good actor. And I actually kind of appreciate how brutal Adar is as well. It's funny how in one breath he's saying like, oh, I want a land and I want a life for my people, for my children and the orcs, so that we may live in peace, as he starts killing innocent prisoners, very brutally actually, and very slowly. But I appreciate that. That was like a good villain moment. He's like, tell me where this sword is. And he's like, I'm not going to tell you. And he's like, right, I'm just going to start killing people. He just starts killing people there and then. I really like that. I really like that he does that. At some point during this point, the Morgul sword must get switched because, you know, there's a switch at the end, and have you heard of Sauron, my lad? Like, he's the guy who takes the sword at the end, isn't he? Oh, fucking hell. Okay, then we have the cavalry coming in. So the cavalry come riding in, Galadriel at the front of it, of course. And some of the maneuvers she's doing on this fucking horse. And I thought, should I be mad about this? Because Legolas does some pretty over-the-top maneuvers. And I'm okay with some of those, but it does get ridiculous, especially when you get to the Hobbit trilogy. Jesus Christ. I don't like any of the Legolas stuff in the Hobbit trilogy, don't get me wrong. But doesn't like someone throw a spear at Galadriel, and she does this thing where she like sidesteps it on the horse, and she's like on the side of it, and they do that twice. It was so cool the first time, apparently, that they thought, right, we're just going to do it again. She's dodging arrows, she's dodging everything, and the first one, because she not only just sidesteps on the horse, but she kind of like, it reminds, you know, when she was teaching the men of Numenor how to fight last episode, and she does that really cringy, she's like smiling in slow motion as she dodges this sword. It reminded me of that. She puts this expression on her face when she dodges this spear. It's just so stupid. And they're like, who is that? And he goes, Arondir goes, that is the commander of the northern armies, Galadriel. I just thought, oh, fuck's sake, this is commander of the northern armies, commander of the northern armies, Galadriel. I don't even need to say anything. I just need to read the lines from this show. The lines speak for themselves at this point. Nikki has a very good question here. Where did all those horses come from? Well, I guess they were all packed on the 3 ships. Was it 4 ships that left Numenor at the end of last episode? There's a lot of horses, okay, underneath the decks. Like Isildur's got his work cut out for him. There's a lot going on. And yet when you see him when he's eating the apple, and he's like, that was a weird scene as well. He's eating the apple with this horse. It didn't look like there were many horses down there. With the amount of cavalry that show up in this, you would expect that the horses wouldn't have moved. It wouldn't be able to move, sorry. They wouldn't have room. It would be like this horrible, disgusting place to keep all these beautiful creatures, and it's just, there's like 1 horse down there, maybe a couple in the background, and that's it. We've got another quote here. The Numenoreans in their own land possessed horses, which they esteemed, but they did not use them in war, for all their wars were overseas. There you go. Disaster of the Gladden Fields. Well, fuck me, right? I mean, it doesn't surprise me, because Amazon don't give a shit about the law, unfortunately. It's nice that you certainly do, and I hope we all do in this chat. We respect the law and Tolkien's works, but yeah, it's that. Yeah, because if they did, you'd make the argument, well, during the Battle of the Last Alliance, why wasn't there a massive cavalry charge on the you know, on the plains? Why didn't they just charge in like the Rohirrim? No, you're absolutely right. They got it right in that film. Tar says she was fired from that commander job. Yeah, exactly. Nikki says 3 ships carrying 298 men and 2 massive bints, and apparently equal number of horses. The fact there is no ship big enough in this world, let alone 3, that can contain the level of Karanisms and bintage, that's the word I've just coined right now, between Miriel and Galadriel. the level of ego and hubris that both of those characters have. And there's a scene in this episode as well where they is it Miriel and Bronwyn who meet up, or is it Miriel and Galadriel who have a moment on the battlefield? I can't remember. And it's just like a kind of you go girl moment, like you're awesome, like yeah, whatever. We then have the scene where Adar picks up the sword in a bundle and gets on his horse and starts, fleeing the scene, fleeing the battle. And Galadriel like puts her shades on and she's like, starts charging after him. I think at this point as well, you get another spear dodge of some kind. And then you get a complete rip-off of the Flight to the Ford sequence from the Fellowship of the Ring. It's shot in a very similar way during this horse chase through this like wooded area. And just to seal the deal, you have a slow motion sequence of Galadriel riding on a horse, and she's like, Norolim, Norolim, to like spur the horse on, which is exactly what Arwen says in Fellowship of the Ring, and indeed Glorfindel, I think, in the Fellowship of the Ring book. It's like, Norolim Asphaloth, Norolim, and it's, you can clearly tell what they're trying to do. It's the red letter media thing. It's like, you may not have noticed it, but your brain did. It's exactly the same thing. You then have a scene where Halbrand comes out, and he also does a spear maneuver, and he trips Adar's horse, and the horse goes flying, and you're like, the horse is dead. But we can't kill any horses in this show, so we've got to show the horse getting up just absolutely fine. Halbrand can't be a monster, despite the fact that he is quite clearly Sauron. You have a moment where doesn't Adar say something like, who are you? Or no. So Adar gets his hand stabbed, doesn't he, by Sauron. I'm not even going to call him Halbrand, it's Sauron. Stabs him with the spear. And then Adar's trying to remember him. He doesn't recognize him, does he? And he says, like, who are you? Did I kill like your wife or a child or something? And Halbrand's like really pissed off with him. Tar makes a great point here, and he says, how did Halbrand get in front of them? Maybe because he's Sauron, maybe he shapeshifted into like a winged creature or something, or I don't know. Can he still? Well, he can still shapeshift at this point, can't he? Because it's after the fall of Numenor where Sauron can no longer again take fair form, so he can still shapeshift. So I don't know. It's almost like terrible writing, isn't it? Hey, Sauron in the books, in the Silmarillion, and I'm sure you know this, has transformed into werewolves and vampires. He could transform into a giant vampire bat and fly if he wanted to. I don't know. That's me trying to cover up this terrible writing. Galadriel has a line here, and I can't remember what the context of it was. She says, one cannot satisfy thirst by drinking seawater. Oh, yeah, I know. It's where Halbrand goes to kill Adar, doesn't he? And she's like, no. Don't kill him. One cannot satisfy thirst by drinking seawater. So let's break this down right now. Halbrand, although we know he's going to be Sauron, has some kind of qualm, has some kind of beef with Adar, and he wants to kill him. He's vengeful. He wants to kill him. He's got him there. He's got him dead to rights. This guy has led an entire orc army against an innocent village to murder them all. And he's got him there. He's meant to be the king of the Southlands, right? And he's meant to be protecting all the people. It is his duty to kill this guy, to kill Adar, and to just crush the evil forces that have beset his lands. And Galadriel, of all people, says, no, vengeance isn't the way. One cannot satisfy thirst by drinking seawater, which, although it's an absolutely terrible, clunky line, I get the meaning behind it, although it's terrible. She's basically saying that, you can't, just because you're going to get your revenge, like, you shouldn't stoop this low. You can't become evil. You can't take this step into killing him because it's too vengeful, and you can't go down that path, and it will never quench your thirst, just killing him. Says Galadriel, whose entire motive in this entire show so far has been the need for vengeance against the orcs for the death of her brother, which she enacts with great satisfaction during this episode when she leads the cavalry charge into battle and is killing orcs. and then speaks to Adar afterwards, saying that I will not rest until every single one of your kind is murdered. So she just wants to create just mass genocide on this entire race of people, just complete ethnic cleansing of the orcs. Sorry, orcs. Yet before this point, she tells Halbrand, she says, oh yeah, no, you can't quench your thirst by killing this guy, so we've got to keep him alive. It's like, she's all over the place. Her motive makes no sense. Yeah, exactly. Says the woman who has been on a revenge quest for 300 years. Yeah, precisely. It just makes no sense. There you go. Vengeance is not the way unless it is my vengeance. You have not seen my vengeance. My vengeance is more than yours, Halbrand. It's just fucking terrible, isn't it? It's just so bad. Okay, then we get to the scene where Galadriel's interrogating Adar. They've got him prisoner now. They've got all the orcs prisoner outside, which is a really... If she mentions to him here that she will not rest until she has killed every single orc walking on this earth, basically. But they've got all the orcs prisoner outside. So if she's going to do that anyway, and she wants to do that, why wouldn't she just kill all the orcs that survive? I don't understand that, because surely they have some prisoners and they surely still have some outside. I don't understand that bit. And they engage in some conversation. Some of it I actually appreciate. She says that, oh, here we go. We get another repurposed quote here. Exactly the same from Fellowship, this time a Saruman quote. He's talking about the fact that orcs still have a right to be in this world. Hashtag Orcs Lives Matter. Because they are born... The one has created everything. Everything on this Middle Earth has a place because it's all part of a master plan, and it's all created by Eru, the One. There is a quote which, Tar, you can probably help me out with here. I know it's in the Silmarillion, and it's right after the War of, I guess you call it the War of the Music, I guess, where Melkor tries to rise up after the creation against Eru, and Eru says something like, you are still a part of me. There is nothing that is in this world that isn't from a product of my own design, including you, Melkor. I absolutely butchered that quote, but there's a line similar to that. He says, everything within this world, you can chart its source. You can chart the origin of that thing to me, because everything has been from my mind and my creation. Again, I don't know how Adar is creating orcs, because he possesses no magical quality like that. He is just an elf. And I called it, didn't I? I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that my prediction for Adar was that he was going to be an orc that was one of the... Oh, what does she call them? The Morondir or something like that, I think she calls them. I've forgotten the elvish name that she calls them. The elves that were captured by Morgoth and tortured. And I guess, didn't I? I did say I thought that he was going to be one of these ones that were, partly tortured or part mid-transformation into an orc that had been corrupted. And I was right. And then Galadriel says the line about the orcs being, quote, made into a new and ruined form of life. And this is what I mean. That is a complete rip-off, almost word for word, pretty much is word for word, from Saruman in the Fellowship of the Ring. And I don't know where the rights to that, can they just lift entire lines, script lines, screenplay lines from the Lord of the Rings films? I don't get it. The line is from the Fellowship of the Ring where Saruman's talking to Lurtz, and he's like, do you know how the orcs first came into being? They were elves once, taken by the dark powers, tortured and mutilated, a horrible and ruined form of life. It's almost exactly the same. I can't Christopher Lee, by the way. I tried. He's got the quote. Tar, please tune in every single stream from now on, because, dude, you are the man. I love reading this shit. I really need to go back to the Silmarillion again. I really do. I absolutely adore this book with every fiber of my being. This is your minstrelry, and each of you shall find contained herein, amid the design that I set before you, all those things which it may seem that he himself devised or added. And thou, Melkor, wilt discover all the secret thoughts of thy mind, and wilt perceive that they are but a part of the whole and tributary to its glory. Oh God, it's just wonderful, isn't it? Oh, love it, love it, love it. We get more parallels here to Halbrand being an Aragorn-like figure, the way he's decked out, the way how, you know, kingly he is, and the fact that all the people say, "Oh, this are you the king that was promised?" I am. You know, he's put aside the ranger. He's become who he was born to be, and he is the king that was promised. The king in the north, or I guess the king in the south. Technically, it's the Southlands, isn't it? That is the understatement of our age, my friend. Tolkien could write. He absolutely could. Just listen to look at the language in that. Again, just bringing it up. Look at the language. I have no words. I have no words. Tolkien had all the words. He had all of them. Let's see. Oh, yeah, okay. Then we have the scene of Arondir talking to Theo. We're almost finished now, guys. We're almost finished. We have the scene of Arondir talking to Theo about the sword, and Theo's talking about how he feels really powerful from it, and it's corrupting him, and how he needs to let go of it. Again, it's this show's equivalent of the One Ring. And then he opens the... Arondir says about getting rid of the sword. He says, "Then rid yourself of it, once and for all." And again, it's a complete rip-off of Samwise Gamgee's line from Return of the King. You know, when it right before I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you. You got Frodo who's like freaking out. He's like, "There is no veil between me and the Wheel of Fire. I can see him with my waking eyes." And then Sam goes, "Then let us be rid of it once and for all." Just rip off superior media, superior content. Amazon, King that was promised, George R. R. Martin, Prince that was promised. There you go. Yeah, I knew I'd heard that term somewhere before. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm going to take a drink. Okay. Right after this point, you have Elendil and Isildur who see a man about a horse. They're bonding over this horse. Right around this time, you've got is it the orcs? No, it's the sword. It's the sword. The old guy. Have you heard of Sauron? He's actually stole the sword. He did a bait and switch, and he stole the Morgul sword. And he puts it in the thing, and he twists the key, and this like this lock thing happens. The river or the dam or whatever it is depresses, and all the water starts filtering into all the tunnels that the orcs have been creating for years, and starts flowing underneath the water and everything like that. The earth was quaking, and the world was shaking, and all of that. Might be a bit of a stretch here, but it did kind of remind me of the whole ending of Two Towers, where the ends, you know, like break the dam, release the river. It just reminded me of that a little bit. Right around this time, Isildur's horse starts freaking out, and I'm thinking it's all because animals have a, you know, like a sense about these things, don't they? They can sense when something's up in nature, and the horse starts freaking out. But apparently it's not to do with the fact that everything's about to go to shit and a volcano is about to erupt. Apparently this horse is freaking out because it has a bond with Isildur and can read his thoughts, and because Isildur is troubled, the horse is troubled. And here I guess you get the origin story of how Aragorn was able to have such a close relationship with his sword Brago. There's a lot of talking to the horses in you know, like their language, I guess, and calming them down, like Aragorn does to Brago in the extended edition of the Two Towers when he's freaking out. And the bond that's created between the men of Westerness and the horses. I'm like, okay, so we've got an origin story for the horses' bond, which fine. It is what it is. It's not one of the worst scenes in the show, but it is what it is. And then they say, "Where did you learn this from?" And he says, "Your mother." I'm like, okay, so this isn't just a custom. This isn't just a thing in Westerness, then this is just something that was told to Elendil by his spouse, but it's something apparently that all... I don't know. It's something that all... Hang on, let me get this straight. It's something that all men of Westerness, all men of Numenor can do. They can all have like this super, almost telepathic bond with their horse. It's like the Na'vi and their flying pterodactyl things. They plug into them. They've got this bond, this mystical bond. But no one was aware of this bond until Elendil's wife mentioned it to Elendil. Yet, according to this now, this is a warrior nation that have many horses, that love riding around on horses, and will go to battle with cavalry and horses. But yet none of them have gone, you know what, I feel strangely connected to my horse today. I just never understood that. You guys get that? Yeah, we get it too. We can't put a name on that, though. That's weird. Until Elendil's wife comes along and spells it out. Very strange. Nikki says, why did they sneak that stupid ass scene in there? Like, what the fuck are they doing? It's just absolutely shameless. Remember Aragorn and that horse from Two Towers? Member, yeah, full of member berries. The thing is, like, if it was like genuinely a custom of Numenor and they wanted to kind of give it an origin story or an explanation, I'd be okay with that, because I'm thinking, look, if it's just something that men of Numenor can do and descendants of men of Numenor, then that makes sense why Aragorn can do it. But when he said that, oh, my wife was the first one to tell me that this was a thing, I'm like, well, it's not a custom then, is it? It's not really a trait if it takes someone's spouse to just kind of highlight that it's something that they can do. It'd be like the equivalent of, so the men of Numenor live longer lives, right? They're blessed with long life. And it'd be the equivalent of us men of Numenor live exceedingly long lives. Who told you that? My wife. It's like, but it's a trait that you have that all of you know that you have. So why would it take someone to explain that you have that trait? You know what I mean? Quote here from Tar. The Numenoreans trained their horses to hear and understand calls by voice or whistling from great distances. And also there was great love. I don't know if there's a continuation to that quote or if that's the end of the quote right there. But yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with it, but it just felt clunky how it was thrown in the episode. And I guess with the level of other shameless callbacks that we've had with direct lines lifted from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I just naturally assumed that was just another shameless, you know, as Nikki said, remember it? Do you remember? And also there was great love between men or women and their favorite steeds. They could, or so it is said in ancient tales, summon them at need by their thought alone. Lives of the Numenoreans. That's really cool. That's pretty cool, actually. Let's see. So they bond over a horse and then break the dam, release the river. Everything starts going to shit. And then Erodruin, Mount Doom, erupts. And looks like we're going to have a Pompeii situation on our hands. But you see the oh god, what's it called? The something plastic flow, chiroplastic flow, or whatever it's called, from a volcano. It's been ages since I did high school geography. You just got this blast radius that is happening. You've just got this scorching, searing hot ash cloud just being projected everywhere, annihilating buildings, disintegrating people in its path. Just everything it touches, it's just igniting. Scalding hot, just ash cloud and molten fragments just sweeping across the land. You've got everyone freaking out, but you've got Miriel and you've got some of the soldiers that are gathering some of the innocents up, and they're trying to get them to safety anywhere they can find, anywhere that's nowhere is safe, but they're helping, they're trying to chip in, they've got people on their arm and they're carrying people away. And Galadriel, you know, everyone else is running away, but Galadriel's striding forth towards the ash cloud, bitch face on. This isn't even resting bitch face. This is just bitch face. And she's not helping anyone. You know, she's the commander of the Northern armies, and she doesn't give a fuck about its people because she wants to look cool. She wants that 1080p. She wants that 4K background, that wallpaper of her standing looking like a badass. And then the entire fucking ash cloud. I'm going to bring up my I'm going to bring up the thumbnail again for the stream. That. Yeah, I mean, you got Santa Claus right there on the left-hand side, and is the dude in a woolly hat running away from it. She's just standing there like a boss. And that thing comes towards her and flows over and sweeps past her. And she's fine. She lived through that. We see shots right before that moment of entire buildings just getting burnt, disintegrated, just vaporized in an instant. But Galadriel can take that shit. If they're going to do some kind of bullshit thing like Daenerys in Game of Thrones Season 1, where it's like, oh, if you're a true-born Targaryen, you don't feel pain, you can't be burnt. And because she's Galadriel and awesome at everything and has elven blood in her veins and is strong of will and strong of spirit, she can survive an entire ash cloud from a volcano. Fuck this show. But we know she lives because we've seen the trailer and, that scene where she's covered in ash and there's like a red filter over the screen. That's what's coming. There's going to be a fight scene. She fights alongside like two female power alongside Queen Miriel on the slopes of Erodruin. I think it's against those weird witchy cultist people, the Slim Shady people. I think she fights against them. I'm pretty sure. She either fights orcs on the slopes of Mount Doom or she fights these priestesses. And it's an all-out cat fight. It's Galadriel and Miriel back-to-back fighting against these priestesses on the slopes of Mount Doom. That's the rumor that I've heard. I think that was in one of the leaks. And that's the scene when she's covered in ash and everything. She is fighting on the slopes of the volcano. Because Galadriel, boom, is awesome at everything, right? She is so much of a strong woman that she's a man, basically. Yeah, Nikki, you're absolutely right. They never showed that mountain before that moment. Yeah, it caught me off guard. I was like, I thought Erodruin was ages away from where we are. Like, I know it's in the Southlands, but I still thought there was some considerable distance between there and basically the lands that would eventually become Mordor. But apparently not. Apparently not. We're going to cover just so much. You think they've got 5 seasons, right? And we've got the origin of Mount Doom and probably the lands of Mordor. It wouldn't surprise me, actually, by the end of this season, if you've got basically just the devastated ash-covered lands of Mordor. And it looks exactly like the way it does in the movies and everything. On top of that, you're also going to have the destruction of Khazad-dûm. God forbid we have more than one scene to establish Khazad-dûm. It's like, no, we've got to get that Balrog out. We've got to have the destruction of, all the dwarves are going to get killed, probably apart from the plot-centric ones. Khazad-dûm's just going to be completely destroyed by the Balrog. Even though that's not meant to happen until the Third Age. You're going to have all of these things just happen, I think, by the end of the season. Tar says, that is from the recently published Nature of Middle-earth. Neither Jackson nor Amazon would have known of it. I still need to get that book, actually. I genuinely really want to pick that. I might treat myself, actually, this Christmas and pick that one up, even if it's just from my Middle-earth collection. It'll be a long time before I get to read it because, I'm currently going through Lord of the Rings again at the moment, and then I want to go back through the appendices. After that point, I'm probably going to go back through the Silmarillion and then more than likely the Children of Húrin. After that, I want to go through Beren and Luthien and the Fall of Gondolin, and then I'd really like to go through the 12 volumes, but I don't know. Suffice to say, there's going to be enough Tolkien to last me a lifetime, and I will absorb all of it. I want to... Tar, I want to be like you. I want to be able to recall this shit. I want to know these quotes. I want to know exactly where to look for them. Nikki says, would the volcano be the Ash Clouds? would the volcano be the Ash Clouds manager? Yeah. Galadriel's going to speak to the... Gosh, she's such a fucking Karen this whole episode. It is, ma'am. It did not help Aignor and Angrod. No, it certainly didn't. Yeah, the Dagor Bragollach. Yeah, that was a rough time for everyone, wasn't it? The Dagor Bragollach. Ugh. And that's the end of the episode. I did want to say as well, Bronwyn was apparently on death's door and had lost a lot of blood, but then by the end of the episode, she's up, she's fine. It's like nothing happened, so she's all hunky dory. Yeah, and the final shot of the episode is Galadriel getting hit with a scalding hot, devastating ash cloud from one of the biggest volcanoes you could ever hope to see. And that's it. So I'm going to love how they're going to write around that. I bet the next episode is just going to be her getting hit with that blast cloud, and then the cloud is going to part, and she's just going to be stood there covered in ash with that same bitchy expression and the same hero pose that she's striking. Shoulders back, arms down, pout, scowl, angry eyes, eyebrows angled down like this. It's going to be that, isn't it? That's going to be our opening scene of the next... I guarantee the next episode. So no Half-Foots this episode, no Elrond, no Durin, no meat. Give it to me raw. None of that. So I'm assuming the next episode we're probably going to pick up with the Half-Foots. Wonderful, because why not? And yeah, we're just going to have more volcano stuff, aren't we? I guess. I don't know. But yeah, the rumor is that she's going to fight with Miriel on the slopes of the volcano against the priestesses. Because the priestesses so far, we've had like 1 20-second scene of them, haven't we? They showed up at the crash landing site for Gandalf. One looks menacingly towards the camera. And that's it. That's all we've had from them so far. No sense of character, no nothing. Tar says, will we see even a scar on the near constant bare-shouldered Bronwyn? I don't know. Is that going to be too much budget for them? Well, we know that this is the most expensive TV show in history, so there are no excuses. I think she needs to. But, yeah, guys, I'm done. It's another episode down. Another one down. It's shorter tonight than I've done on some of the previous ones. I know other weeks I've gone for 2 hours, but I genuinely think the reason that we don't... Well, we've still had a lot to talk about, haven't we? But I think the reason that I haven't gone on as long tonight is just the fact that there is dialogue. There's the scene as well that I didn't mention where Halbrand and Galadriel connect, but we've already kind of mentioned that we think they're going to try and ship them as an item, which I really hope doesn't happen, but I can see it happening, and then she gets betrayed because he's Sauron, which is going to make her even more angrier and more vengeful, and... Oh, God. But we're all in it together, aren't we? As I keep saying, this is like a group therapy session. It's nice to have a platform where we can all share in our passion for Tolkien and just laugh. Just laugh at how incompetent this is. And it is funny. It is funny. That's the thing. It is terrible. I actually kind of do look forward to watching it each week just because I'm morbidly curious what they're going to fuck up next time. So yeah, I think the reason that, shorter tonight, I say shorter, we still went on for 90 minutes. I think it's just because there wasn't as much dialogue in this one. It was just much more action focused, wasn't it? And killing things. And there's not really much to take away or critique about that. But there are still some scenes where they open their mouth in this episode, and that's where the problems lie. So, Tar says, will we see a scar on the near constant bare-shouldered Bronwyn? Or she refuses him and he is upset. Oh, yeah, maybe. Maybe he comes on to her and she goes like, no, I lost a husband and I can't fall in love again because Celeborn... They're going to say what I think this is the key, right? I think when they wrote this show, they wanted Celeborn dead, and they wrote it as Celeborn dead. So I think season 1, Celeborn is dead. I think by season 2, they're going to retcon this, and I think they're going to have him be captured or he's a prisoner somewhere, and then Galadriel's going to have to... Maybe the plot for season 2 is that she's going to have to try and go and find Celeborn, maybe, or go and save him. But then if you've got a whole season 2 of Galadriel's story where she's looking for a man, then that's going to take away her agency, isn't it? Regardless if he's her spouse. You can't have a woman going to look for a man. He's got to try and find the woman. Can't have a woman doing that. She's got her own problems. She's got her own agenda, and her imprisoned, tortured hubby ain't one of them. So I don't know. It's all speculation at this point, isn't it? But let's round off then. So that'll do it for our review on Udûn. And I do say our review because, as I say, we're all in this together. Thank you so much for everyone who's tuned in tonight. Nikki, we had Carl at the beginning as well. Taralenian, just everyone that's tuned in. I do appreciate each and every single one of you. Raphael, Gustavo as well at the beginning. This is great. I live for this shit, and it's really cool that we can have a conversation about it as well. So I wanted to make an announcement about next week's episode. So I, of course, will be back next Friday. Same bat time, same bat channel. The Rings of Power episode 7 review, that's going to be on the 2nd of October at 11 p.m. British Standard Time. And I will be joined by another fellow Tolkien fan in collaboration, the first collaboration on these Rings of Power reviews. I'm going to be joined by Everything in Middle-earth. Fingers crossed. He messaged me tonight and actually wanted to jump on tonight, but we couldn't make our schedules work tonight. But he's shown interest in jumping on with me. So, hopefully the next review will be a collaboration. I think that'll be really cool. God knows what episode 7 is going to have in store for us. But it'll be a different dynamic. It'll be an actual conversation, a back and forth about it. He has tuned on a bunch of the reviews. He has signed on and commented along on a bunch of the reviews on these before. So, I'm looking forward to it. So hopefully I can get that off the ground. In the meantime, please do consider subscribing to the channel for more movie reviews, discussions, and live streams. I love doing this. I don't like watching the shit, but I do love talking about it. And it's not just Rings of Power, it's a whole bunch of other stuff as well, which I guess I can announce now as well. Alongside this, in the TV realm, I am talking about Star Wars content as well. So every Wednesday, I'm talking about Star Wars and also on Wednesday, the 5th of October, also at 11 p.m. British Standard Time, I'm talking about each episode of Star Wars Andor. It's actually not awful so far, which is the most surprising thing about this so far. It's not fantastic and it's not great, but it is holding my interest and it has got me interested. There's a lot of stuff that I enjoy about it, especially the world building. So tune in for that if you're into it. Now, originally, I was going to be doing my 25th and final Bond review on the channel for No Time to Die this upcoming Tuesday, but I completely forgot that I'm actually at a concert in London on Tuesday night, and it is a James Bond concert. It's the sound of James Bond. It's going to be the sound of 007 at the Royal Albert Hall. I'm very much looking forward to that. Shirley Bassey's meant to be there, fingers crossed. Garbage and a bunch of other singers putting their own spins on James Bond songs. So I'm going to be in London that night. So I think just based on my schedule, there's going to be no Bond review this next week. So I'm going to have to park No Time to Die to the following Tuesday, which will be the final James Bond review on the channel. And then I'll be moving into other things then. So once again, thank you to everyone that's signed in. As I mentioned, do subscribe to the channel. Give me a follow on Twitter as well. You can find me at Hobbit Fan Editor. I post all my live stream links and what I've got planned for the channel, as well as films that I'm seeing in the week that I might just see in my downtime or at the cinema or something like that. It's just a Twitter channel for film fans and TV show fans where we can openly talk about things. It's good fun. It's good fun. So, I once again, a big thank you to everyone. I really appreciate you for tuning in and taking an hour and a half out of your evening on a Friday night. I will be back next week for more Rings of Power. Until then, take care, everyone. Stay excellent, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.